Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Budale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Pastrachari Stare Vanchakalpa Trubhischa Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. I'm just going to be reading the Brihad Bagavatamrta. This is part 2, chapter 2. And I'm only going to read the English, so it goes smoothly and quickly. Angry at not hearing the Shrutis and Smritis speak up, some of the great Upanishads and scriptures, like the Agamas, who follow in their footsteps, openly confirm that devotional service is an independent cause of liberation. Purport, commentary it's called. The more devotional of the Upanishads were angry at the other devotional scriptures who weren't bold enough to say that what they knew, and so were certain Vaishnava Agamas and Puranas who took shelter of those Upanishads. Together, therefore, these Upanishads, Agamas, and Puranas declared that no uncertain terms that liberation is effortlessly achieved by unalloyed devotional service to the Supreme Lord, is stated in the Brihad Naradiya Purana 179. Dharmartha kama mokshaya mokshakya purusartha dvichotamaha hari bhakti puranana vai sampadyante na samshaya. O best of the Brahmanas, there is no doubt that all those who are dedicated to Lord Hari's devotional service achieve all the goals of life, known as religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. And in a prayer to the personality of Godhead, we read in Sri Vishnu Purana, Dharmartha kama kim tasya muktis tasya kare stata samasta jagatam mule yasya bhakti stira tvayi. What is the value of religiosity, economic development, and sense gratification to one who has firm devotion to you, the root of all the worlds? Liberation sits in the palm of his hand. Next text. A few confidential Upanishads smiled and kept silent, along with some confidential major Agamas and Puranas. Commentary. The little-known confidential Upanishads, like the Gopal Tapani, smiled but said nothing, and so did certain Vaishnava Agamas, like the Sattvata Siddhanta, and a few Puranas, like Srimad Bhagavatam. Some were thinking, just see the power of the Supreme Lord's illusory energy, which makes the essential meaning of scriptures, which should be obvious, incomprehensible to vastly learned authorities. Others were thinking scornfully, who are these Shastras to presume that merely bestowing liberation is the true glory of bhakti? This second group saw no purpose in arguing with scriptures whose outlook was so dissimilar to their own, and even thought it improper that these intimate topics were discussed in public. Granted, these scriptures thought karma, jnana, and moksha make up the ladder ascending to bhakti, devotional service, and so the glories of Vedic rituals, knowledge, and liberation culminate in the glories of bhakti. Nonetheless, when the main focus of discussion is on lesser spiritual methods, the importance of bhakti can be hinted at. In such context, its super excellence cannot be properly revealed. With these thoughts in mind, the Bhagavatam and other scriptures, following the lead of the confidential Upanishads, kept quiet. Next, a fierce debate then arose between the Agamas on one side and the scriptures like certain Shrutis and Puranas on the other side. About whether or not liberation is achieved merely by chanting mantras that worship the personality of Godhead. Unable to tolerate the debate, the Puranas, Agamas, and Upanishads, who had been silent, covered their ears and left. Commentary. Amnaya means the original Vedic text, the Shrutis, and the phrase Amnaya Puranadibi, the suffix Adibi, and so on, indicate scriptures such as Dharma Shastras and epic histories, as the previous discussions were left behind and a debate began on a new topic. The Shastras, who were unable to tolerate hearing it, or the doubt on which it was based, left the assembly in disgust. They covered their ears to avoid the offense of even hearing doubts about the Supreme Lord's mantras have power to give liberation. These Shastras in their own pages never entertain even a hint of doubts about this. Moments before, the confidential Upanishads had taken the lead in keeping quiet, followed by the Bhagavatam and other confidential Mahapuranas. Now, in boycotting the debate, the Bhagavatam and its colleagues took the lead. Translation. Then the major Puranas and Upanishads became arbitrators, and so victory went to the Agamas. That pleased me very much. Gopakumar speaking, teaching his Brahmin student. Now the most advanced Puranas, Upanishads, and Agamas had walked out on the debate. They were able to give impartial consideration to both sides, and they deemed correct the claim made by the Agamas that liberation is easily achieved simply by chanting mantras, worshipping the personality of Godhead. As stated in the Vishnu Purana, Gatva Gatva Nivartante Chanda Surya Dayo Graha Adyapina Vivartante Dwada Saksara Chintaka. Even the moon, sun, and other planets are created and destroyed again and again, but persons who have meditated on the 12-syllable Vishnu mantra have never had to return even till present day. And the Padma Purana gives this opinion: Japena Devata Nicham Stuyamana Prasidati Prasana Vipulan Bogan Dadyan Muktim Cha Shasvatim. Supreme Lord is always satisfied when praised by the chanting of his mantras, so he offers abundant enjoyment as well as eternal liberation. Because Gopakumar was absorbed in chanting a mantra addressed to the Supreme Lord and had no interest in other spiritual practices, he was extremely pleased by the conclusion of the debate. Maya bi pracha tadbhava. Next verse. Discerning the inner mood of the Puranas, Agamas, and other scriptures who had left the debate, I pacified them with tactful praise and brought them back to the assembly. Comment. Gopakumar had noted the grave smiles on the faces of the Bhagavatam, Sattvata, Siddhanta, and other scriptures who left the assembly. Those signs led him to believe that these few Shastras, among all the others, best understood the truth. With humility and adroit praise, he managed to bring them back. From these scriptures, Srimad Bhagavatam, the Sattvata Siddhanta, and other Agamas, and the foremost Shrutis, I respectfully asked about the truth of the matter, and they replied. Comment. With great respect, Gopakumara asked the Bhagavatam and other devotional scriptures about the true nature of liberation. He also inquired why they had responded to the discussion the way they had, first by smiling silently and then by covering their ears and leaving the assembly. Next, the devotional scripture said, My dear one, who have achieved the post of Brahma, this topic is more secret than the rare treasure, but we shall explain it to you because your abundant good qualities inspire us to speak freely. Commentary. In text 169 through 230, the Bhakti Shastras answer, since Gopakumar holds the post of Lord Brahma, he is worthy of the privilege to hear such elevated topics. One might argue that the secrets of devotional service should not be freely divulged to anyone, not even the Lord of the entire universe. Unless he is fully surrendered to the Supreme Lord and his devotees, then Gopakumar's personal qualifications should be taken into account, especially his eagerness to engage in the Supreme Lord's service. We who are dedicated to the personality of Godhead's devotional service may sometimes discuss liberation, but only to encourage people to reject it completely. When we speak of liberation, we condemn it and everything that goes with it. Comment. The Bhakti Shastras have no business promoting liberation, but sometimes they do describe it, because people generally cannot give up attachment to something unless scientifically taught why it is undesirable. When the Bhakti Shastras speak of liberation, they criticize attachment to liberation for its own sake, and attachment to Gyan and other impersonal means of striving for liberation. Next verse. To describe the ultimate glories of devotional service, we may sometimes speak highly of moksha or liberation, but we do not intend to acclaim moksha as the final goal of spiritual discipline, because in moksha there is not even a trace of real happiness. Comment. In some passages of the Bhakti Shastras, the joy found in liberation is described as being greater than any happiness in material life. The Shastras provide this information to contrast the joy of liberation with the joy of pure devotional service, which is billions of times more intense. Other than the joy of liberation, nothing can be meaningfully compared to the joy of bhakti. Properly speaking, however, the concept of joy and liberation is only a theoretical creation of the impersonalist. As the Bhakti Shastras declare in this verse, liberation is not even a trace of real happiness. The so-called happiness of liberation may be compared to happiness of not being sick or the enjoyment of deep sleep. In fact, the very term liberation is a misnomer created by illusion, and it appeals only to the ignorant. Commentary. As the scriptures like to do, they here support their proposition with analogies. Simply being free from the pain of disease is not positive happiness, nor is there happiness in deep sleep, which is nothing but a condition of ignorance. One only imagines that in deep sleep one is happy, because in that sleep one is free for a while from the mind's flights of fancy and from dreams and other agitations. One thinks, I slept happily, unaware of anything. In the same way, one only imagines that there is happiness in liberation, a state of apparent voidness in which birth, death, and other pains of material existence are not perceived. People praise liberation only because they are unaware of the facts. The very term liberation is a misnomer, as Lord Brahma says in the 10th canto. Agyana samgyo bhava bandha moksho dvao nama nanyao sta ritta gyan bhavat ajastra chit yatmani kevale pare vicharyamane taranav vahani. The conception of material bondage and that of liberation are both signs of ignorance. They lie outside the scope of true knowledge. They cease to exist when one correctly knows that a pure spirit soul is distinct from matter and always fully conscious. Bondage and liberation no longer have any meaning, just as day and night mean nothing to the sun. Next verse. From even a shadow of the Lord's names, if one chants them but once, or merely if they enter the ears, liberation is easily attained. Commentary. Even if after hearing how the previous verse defines liberation, one still wants to know the means to obtain it, from the present statement one can learn that devotees of the personality of Godhead achieve liberation without separate endeavor, as a mere byproduct of the practice of bhakti. Furthermore, one's service to the holy names of the Lord need not even be pure, simply nama basa. The shadow of chanting the Lord's names earns one liberation. Nama basa resembles the shadow of the real object of the world. It is unintentional uttering in jest, contempt, or other moods of neglect, of sounds that contain the same syllables as Lord Vishnu's names. Chanting or hearing nama basa even once results in liberation. It is stated in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Eta batalam aga nirharanaya pumsam sankirtanam bhagavato gunakarma nam vikrusyapat putram agavan yad ajamalopi narayaneti mriyamana tvaya muktim. It should be therefore understood that one is easily relieved from all sinful reactions by chanting the holy name of the Lord and chanting his qualities and activities. This is the only process recommended for the relief from sinful reactions. Even if one chants the holy name of the Lord with improper pronunciation, he will achieve relief from material bondage if he chants without offenses. Ajamil, for example, was extremely sinful, but while dying he merely chanted the holy name. And although calling his son, he achieved complete liberation because he remembered the name of Narayan. Also, at the beginning of the history of Satyatapa, Braha Purana tells of a tiger that once approached a Brahmana who was busy chanting japa while standing in water. The tiger wanted to eat the Brahmin, but at that very moment, the tiger was killed by a hunter. And because of hearing the names of the Supreme Lord from the mouth of the Brahmin, the tiger was liberated. Next verse. Liberation, please understand, is an attractive to those who discrimination is poor. It is evident even from the opinions of the same Vedas, Puranas, and other scriptures that the proponents of liberation accept as authorities. Commentary. In philosophical debates, opposing sides are from different schools of thought undoubtedly base their opinions on their own assumptions. Buddhists, for example, assume that everything is but momentary and thus unreal, while the logicians of the Gautama school assume that whatever has perceivable qualities is real. A debate is effective when each side, rather than fight over the assumptions, accepts for the sake of argument the assumptions of the other side and works out their own arguments from that starting point. It is in this sense that the Bhakti Shastras accept the scriptural statements yogis cite in support of their conviction that impersonal liberation is the final goal of life. Next verse. Moksha, liberation, is the removal of all misery, or the stopping of illusory activities, or the self-realization that comes from abandoning the false identities created by Maya. Commentary. These three alternative definitions of moksha, taken from various shastras, are adhered to by those who strive for liberation. The logicians of Gautama's Nyaya school hold that liberation is the removal of all kinds of misery, which they count as 21. As the followers of Gautama say, Atyantiki dukkha nivritti mukti. Liberation is complete stoppage of suffering. A section of the Vedanta school says that liberation is the ceasing of illusion and thus the activity, and thus the ceasing of illusion and thus of activity. Another party of impersonal Vedantists, the illusionists, Vivartavadis, define liberation as rejecting the false identity produced by the power of illusion and thus realizing oneself to be one with Brahman. The Vivartavadis further describe the false identity of the illusion soul in terms of dualities and the cycle of life and death. These impersonalists sometimes cite Srimad Bhagavatam as the source of their definition. Muktir hitvan yata rupam swarupena vivastiti. Liberation means to give up all other identities and assume one's true essential identity. The happiness, next verse, the happiness that arises from directly perceiving the true identity of the jiva soul, the entity composed of eternity, knowledge, and bliss, is actually meager. Commentary. The moksha, or liberation, conceived of in the first two ideas cited above, moksha is the end of misery and as the end of causes of misery, affords no positive happiness. This was not difficult to show. Furthermore, the happiness of self-realization presumed in the third theory of moksha, or that vivarta, is actually meager, as the Bhakti Shastras in 176 to 195 now set out to prove. Compared to the bliss of performing pure devotional service and realizing the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who embodies the perfection of Brahman, realizing the identity of a jiva soul brings very little happiness. In fact, the so-called happiness of self-realization is nothing more than a negation of suffering. The scriptures refer to that as happiness only as a concession to the foolish, but at least the happiness of perceiving jiva soul serves as a standard of comparison by which to think of the joy of pure devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Next, that entity, the reality of pure self, is called Brahman. It is devoid of qualities, free from attachment, unchanging, and inactive. Commentary. The impersonalists now suggest that in contrast to the small happiness of realizing the minute jiva, the relish of perceiving the impersonal supreme in liberation is unlimited. However, the Bhakti Shastras here point out that the Vedanta Sutra's own definition of the supreme leaves little room in Brahman realization for happiness. According to them, Brahman is devoid of qualities such as compassion. It has no attachment to anything or anyone, including the pure Vaishnavas. It undergoes no changes, such as the transformations of the heart melting in the ecstasy of love, and displays none of the dynamic varieties of opulence and sweetness shown by the Supreme Lord in his personal form. It also inactive, which implies it has no wonderful alternative pastimes, all attractive pastimes. Thus, the happiness of realizing Brahman cannot transcend the limits of impersonalism. Next verse. But the personality of Godhead is the Supreme Brahman, the Supersoul, the absolute controller of everything. His body is concentrated essence of eternity, knowledge, and bliss, and he is the ocean of superlative qualities. Comment. Substantial happiness is not to be found in the impersonal conception of the Supreme, but rather in the pure devotional service of the personality of Godhead. He is the complete absolute truth, Param Brahma. He is also the Supreme Soul, the indwelling controller who regulates everyone's consciousness. As such, he is the ultimate controller of everything, the ruler of even Brahma and other demigods. And as the Lord of Vaikuntha, he is the most concentrated manifestation of eternity, knowledge, and bliss, which constitute his transcendental body. He is an ocean, steady, deep, and infinitely wide, with countless inconceivable and amazing perfections. When the Bhakti Shastras refer to the full personal conception of the Absolute Truth, the term normally used is Para-Brahman, or Param Brahma. In the Bhagavad Gita, Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram Purusham Bhavan. You are the Supreme Brahman, Supreme Abode, Supreme Purifier. When the spiritual identity is indicated in a more generic sense, it is usually called simply Brahman, or again in Bhagavad Gita, Brahmanohi Pratishtoham. I am the foundation of the Absolute, as the Bhagavatam says in 1087.1. How can the Vedas directly describe the Supreme Absolute Truth, who cannot be described in words? O Brahmana, the Vedas are limited in describing the qualities of material nature, but the Vedas are limited to describing the qualities of the material nature, but the Supreme is devoid of those qualities, being transcendental to all material manifestations and their causes. When the adjective param is seen with the term Brahman, it may occasionally be intended to distinguish Brahman and the Supreme Truth from the Vedic sound, which is also called Brahma. Next text. Contrary natures, like having qualities and having no qualities, can join in him. Since impersonal Brahman is an infinite opulence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the difference between him and Brahman is well established. Commentary. As rivers merge in the ocean, many opposite qualities converge in the Supreme Person. The word Adi, after Sagunatva and Agunatva, indicates more opposites, detachment and association, changelessness and change, inactivity and endeavor, openness and multiplicity, non-duality and specific qualities. Conceived as impersonal Brahman, the Supreme is devoid of qualities and other dualities. Conceived as a Paramatma and Parameshwar, the Supreme displays characteristics such as having relationships with other living beings, possessing wonderful qualities, and so on. Thus, in truth, the Supreme is full of qualities, many of them apparently contradictory. Shastras may sometimes say that the Supreme cannot be described in words, and that he has no name, but the literal construction of these statements is refuted by the Vasudeva Adhyatma. Because his qualities are not well known, he is said to have no name, and because his form is not material, he is said to have no form. Mayavadis argue that the personality of Godhead may have qualities, but as products of Maya, these qualities are illusory. Thus they want to reconcile his having qualities with their idea of reality, that the Supreme actually has no qualities. In fact, however, the Supreme powers of the Absolute Truth are eternal and real, not illusory like the material creation. Therefore, when the personal quality features of the Supreme Bhagavan is said to be nirguna, like Brahman, the sense is different. Namely, like that Bhagavan transcends all material qualities. At the same time, like the material world, he has many different qualities, and so is also said to be saguna. This seems contradictory, but is possible by his inconceivable, amazing potencies. Supreme Lord is indeed Mahi Marnava, an ocean in which all perfections converge. This is stated in many Shastras, like the Mahabharata. O ruler of the people, whatever you see in this connection with the material bodies of all living entities, whatever you see composed of the 5 elements born from the intelligence of the Supreme Lord, know that all that to be the Supreme Lord himself, both possessing qualities and having none. He is the ultimate element of all creation, the Supreme Master, the body of the universe, Lord Narayan. Try to understand him to be the inner self of all creatures. In the Kurma Purana, he is neither large nor infinitesimal, yet he is larger and smaller than everything else. He is said to be devoid of color, yet he is dark blue, and the corners of his eyes are reddish. By the play of his personal powers, the Supreme Lord is known by contradictory designation. Yet he is supreme, and faults should never be ascribed to him. In all contradictory qualities combined, Vishnu Dharmottara Purana says, all qualities join together in the Supreme Person by virtue of his transcendental powers, yet no faults ever enter him, for he is the absolute same person. Some persons who are not truly learned say that good qualities and faults exist in the Supreme Lord by the force of Maya, but in him there is no Maya, nor any agent who could possess Maya. How then could he have illusory good qualities and faults that Maya could produce? The opulences of the Supreme Lord are not, therefore, generated by the force of illusion. The Lord transcends Maya, and so he is known as Supreme. All this will be more elaborately explained later on. Although impersonal Brahman and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are but different conceptions of the same Absolute Truth, some think otherwise. They think that Brahman, the Lord's formless aspect, worshipped by yogis, is one entity, and his form possessing impersonal qualities and worshipped by other devotees is a different entity. But although the Mayavadis think that Saguna Brahman is not as real as Nirguna Brahman, they still have to admit that the Saguna aspect of the Supreme is the concentrated eternal essence of pure existence, Shuddha Sattva. But not Brihaspati and others are able to see the personality of Godhead, accepting his share and offerings. Another vivid example appears in the history of Brahma's sons, Ekata, Dvita, and Trita, all great yogis who went to Swetadup to see the Supreme Lord. Even after intense endeavor, they were unable to have his audience. But when Sri Sanaka and his brothers, who constantly perceived Brahman and were the most exalted self-contented sages, visited Vaikuntha, they did see the personality of Godhead, and the ecstasy they felt was so powerful that various transformations manifested in them. This is described in the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. When the breeze carrying the aroma of the tulsi leaves from the toes of the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead entered the nostrils of the sages, they experienced a change in both body and mind, even though they were attached to the impersonal Brahman understanding. The conclusion is that the supreme features of Brahman and the Jiva are two of the personality of Godhead's opulent expansions, as many authoritative sources confirm. For example, according to one saying by saintly persons, Parat Param Brahma Chate Vibhutaya, the supreme truth Brahman is also one of your vibhutis. In Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna includes the soul as one of his vibhutis. Aham Atma Gurakesha Sarva Bhuta Saya Stita. O conqueror of sleep, I am the soul situated in the hearts of all living beings. Brahma Samhita says, Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagadanda Koti. There are different opulences in millions and millions of universes. In other words, Brahman is the supreme person's partial expansion, as stated elsewhere. Those who blaspheme the Supreme Soul go to darkness that has no beginning and end. The Jiva Soul is subordinate, bound, weak, full of faults, and absorbed in very insignificant awareness and enjoyment. But the Supreme has just the opposite qualities. What wickedness does one not commit by saying that the Jiva Soul and the Supreme are the same? When fools and rascals read the scriptural statements that describe oneness of the soul and the supersoul, they become bewildered. These statements inspire them to tell one another, I am you and you are me, my own self. The Beatles sang that. But actually, the Supreme Person is the indwelling regulator, the soul within everyone, and so he is different from the individual soul. In this way, demons are bewildered by statements intended to confuse them, and that bewilderment is pleasing to the demigods and to the Supreme Lord himself. For thinking that the soul and the supersoul are one and the same, the demons go to hell called Mahanda Tama. I'm going to stop there for a while. I thank you, everybody who listened in, and of course, this book is so fantastic that even if I'm reading it, I think it still has value. I recommended everybody to read it. Shalom for Bibi Shan. I don't know, Mohini Murti. How are you doing there? Kanupriya, Vishaka Priya. Nandalal, you always come in. I thought you were working, but no matter what time I go online, you're always there, you're always putting stuff up. William. When Sundra Lingam saying, can she come to my center? I don't know where you are, man or woman. You can come to any Hare Krishna center. You have to let us know where you are so we can give you information. All right. Hare Krishna. Gopakumar ki jai. Sanatana Goswami ki jai. Gopi Pranadhana Prabhu ki jai. Keshav